What happens when you pour gasoline on a fire? And what if the people that came to put that fire out were the people who started it in the first place? You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. We are going to look at just that. The people that started this fire, that poured the gasoline on it, making it even worse, are the ones who come forward with a so called solution. Well, we're going to dig in deep, and I wanted to start with this. Jeffrey Gundlach compares the AI boom in stocks to the dot-com bubble and warns of economic pain. The Bond King has said what we are seeing feels a lot like 1999. He's not saying it is precisely, but note that this is unfortunately not the best circumstance. We don't want that. We want 2017. If you remember anything about 2017, they would say over and over and over again the word Goldilocks. That was the number one term because everything was pretty good. Everything was looking fantastic. Now there are all these exaggerations. And AI, of course, despite the fact that it will be very prominent, it will be used, everywhere you can think of. I'm sure they're going to find a way. It's still being, just say there's too much froth. Well, what's happening to make it get there in the first place? The Fed is getting itchy fingers on a rate cut. Larry Summers urges caution and says it's time to define what neutral means. Where are they willing to get inflation down to? That's the issue here that, of course, we need to think about. Now, there's a lot of central bank activity going on, and it's something that you need to understand here because they are the ones that have decided in the first place where inflation should be, where this neutral rate should be. They are the ones, though, that caused the problem. They are the ones that are actually actively creating an issue for everyone. What then do they pose as the solution to the problem they created? Well, we'll get to that. Fed's Bostic scales back to single rate cut on inflation concerns. So some of them are saying 3 rate cuts, some of them are saying 2, and some of them are saying, more. But in the case of Bostic, he's saying that it's going to be a single rate cut in 2024. Fed's Goolsbee says he sees 3 rate cuts this year. So it all depends on who you ask. Bank of Canada expects it will be able to begin cutting interest rates sometime this year. Officials are split. They don't know. A lot of them are talking about the same time frame of summer. Okay, just like the Federal Reserve. The Swiss Central Bank cuts rates in surprise move, getting ahead of global peers. So they've already started that. I think it's important to note that a lot of the central banks around the world have moved to the point of which they said, okay, we're done hiking, or some of them have started cutting, and some of them are kind of in a wait and see. The world's biggest central banks are on the starting line of reversing a record string of interest rate hikes, but the way down for borrowing costs will look very different from the way up. There will be no floodgates or fireworks. The banks on the opposite side of the Atlantic are likely to move in the smallest increments with periodic pauses, fearing that ultra-low unemployment could rekindle inflation rates still above their targets. Okay, so we'll see what happens there. Ultimately, major central banks are going in this direction. We are seeing the big shift, that big change that could create more inflation, at least when we look at asset prices, because what do we know about assets? They love low interest rates, but they certainly don't like high interest rates. So we see that the potential for bubbles to be fueled, particularly as interest rates decline. Watch it very carefully and closely. All right. It's likely the big central banks, such as the ECB, the Fed, and the BOE, all get started cutting rates in the middle of this year, and that's where the similarities stop. The speed and the destination will vary across the globe, and that's great for fixed income opportunities. Basically, just looking around the world, you can see that they certainly will take actions depending on their circumstances. But I think where we need to look is, no question, inflation rates in reality, not as the central banks, decide to consider what inflation is. The housing prices, rent prices, they are poised to go up rather than to go down. This is a very big concern because it's going to squash people. And ultimately, what we are going to see is more people living under one roof. That is likely to be the case. Where does this bring us? Where does this lead us? I'm telling you right now, this is it. I've been talking about this a while. Swift planning launch of new central bank digital currency platform in 12 to 24 months. We are talking about central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. I know that some have said they will not accept the CBDC, but just like the brain chip, it will not be something that people want to get, but they will be indirectly forced to get. How will they do this? It's very easy. If they really want everybody to accept a CBDC, and that will be because there's different types of CBDCs, there could be a circumstance where CBDCs are used, in this case here, not by individuals, but by establishments, by governments. They won't necessarily be used by the average person. They won't know the difference. But it could be the circumstance where we see people, they're suffering, they need help, and so we need to extend the hand. That's right, universal basic income. And they say, you are going to need this cash, and no problem, we have a very cheap way to get this to you. It's called a CBDC. Here you are, here's some free cash. All you got to do is sign on. And certainly, people are pushed to the edge. They're getting $1,000 a month, $2,000 a month. Don't you think there's potential that a lot of people are going to be signing up to it? I think so. I certainly think so. And this is where it all begins. Global Bank Messaging Network SWIFT is planning a new platform in the next 1 to 2 years to connect the wave of central bank digital currencies now in development to the existing finance system. Around 90% of the world's central banks are looking at digital versions of their currencies. But guess what? This is the craziest thing, okay? They are in its latest trial. It took 6 months, and that involved 38 member group of central banks, commercial banks, and settlement platforms. It's been one of the largest global collaborations on CBDCs and tokenized assets to date. They've already begun. Here we are. What have the people said about central bank digital currencies? We don't want them. Overwhelmingly, people have said, we don't want this. We have no need for this. If you look at the Federal Reserve today, the US dollar today, that can facilitate transactions all around the world. You have the Fed Now system, which makes them faster. Let me tell you, sending a wire from one part of the world to the other hasn't got any cheaper, which that's another issue. But supposedly, if they actually allowed it, the money should be able to move from one part of the world to the other part of the world instantly, basically instantly within a second or two. There's no limitation other than intentional limitations now today. We have the internet, it's all there, it's all in place. So a central bank digital currency, all that does is put another barrier in between you and the wealth that you have. You may not have a lot of wealth, but it still puts a barrier in between you and that. How does that work? I as an individual, I am able to capture my hard-earned effort into a store of value. Okay, let's say if we're going to assume that the US dollar was a store of value. All right, there it is. This is then, its value it derives. It's from multiple things, but let's just say, for instance, it's the government's ability to pay back its debt. Okay, let's just use that example. Well, then, that's fine. But now we took away the government aspect of the US dollar, and now it's something called a Federal Reserve note. Okay, so now we're really reliant on the Federal Reserve. But now what happens when there's a central bank digital currency? We move one step further away from our ability to have any say in the circumstance. And now you go even further, not even just the Fed, but now the Fed collaborating with other central banks doing their thing We have literally no say, no jurisdiction, no election process, nothing. And that was the value that I captured with my hard-earned effort. And of course, that leads us into the point of where do we keep our money? Well, I can tell you right now, I love to earn different currencies. This is something I do. I earn a lot of currencies, but we can't keep our all of our wealth in cash. That would be a big mistake because we know they're devaluing it. That's what we talked about here today. And so we need to have something that stores that value. Real assets do just that. We want to have real assets. What are real assets? Of course, we have the perfect example of real estate. Okay, real estate is one. Precious metals are another. And real things. It could be a Rolex watch. It could be jewelry, high carat jewelry, for instance. These things are real. And there's many other examples. Business is a real asset. There's so many things. That is what is real. That is what holds value over time. And we have a very, very, very long history in these things to track them and see where they've been. And you can kind of get an idea of that. But that's just what's happening. So as we move further away from capturing that value, we have to start thinking longer and harder about where our money is being kept, where are the value that we've provided, the hard effort that we have. If you agree with me, if you want to, say that in a different way, perhaps put it down in the comments. I really do appreciate you being here. Hit that thumbs up. Okay, when you hit it, you are supporting this channel, and you are, of course, speaking to the algorithm to help this channel out. I want to thank you for that. If you are interested in learning about anything related to the financial system, related to how I earn multiple currencies, all of that is available on my website. There's a link in the top of the description. themoneygps.com/live is the absolute best place. I want to see you on there. It is a small group of people, a fantastic group of people, and I want you to be one of those. Okay, click that link. You can email me if you have any other questions. And as always, I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.